Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm a woodworker running a small business out of my small one-car garage. Today I've been working on a project to build some big barn doors for a client. I thought it might be interesting to do a bit of a deep dive into how I keep these big slab doors flat. I use breadboards, kind of similar to a table, just hanging vertically. There's a little bit of a twist on this. It's not your kind of standard haunched tenon just because the way the door needs to hang. I decided to take a bit of a different approach. I found inspiration for this from the Wood Whisperer. He's got a great video too, check it out. But yeah, watch along to see my take on it. Hope you enjoy. First up, I take the pieces I have for the breadboard ends and run them through the jointer to get them nice and squared up. I bought this Bora Portamate off Amazon. It's a roller stand thingy that I'm going to use to help move heavy items around the shop and to give me a bit of an extension surface for pushing long pieces through the jointer. So far it seems pretty good. I might put together a quick review video, but honestly it's pretty simple. I like it because it folds up small and I'm hoping it can act as a shop card as well as a roller stand. We'll see. I recently picked up this Festool 1400 OF router. To set it up for this project, I used one of these setup blocks I bought for tuning up my bandsaw. It's part of the Carter system. It's just a setup block. It works pretty well. I know that the doors are 1.5 inches thick and I've decided I want the tenon to be 1/2 inch thick. So I just set the depth of the router to plunge down 1/2 inch. Simple math is good math. As I mentioned, this Festool router is new to me, and so far I'm finding it pretty nice. Festool stuff isn't always the most intuitive to use, but when you learn the tricks of each tool, they are pretty ingenious. I bought the guide rail attachments with the router to use for this project. They're super easy to attach to the router. You just push the guide rods through the holes in the base of the router and then push them through the holes in the guides. Then tighten them down on both sides, and that's about it. If there's any slop in the guides on the track, there are 2 little screws you can use to adjust the width of the guide. Tiny turns are key here. It's really easy to go from super sloppy loose to so tight you can't move it. Cutting the tenons is pretty straightforward. I used a 7/8 inch compression bit I bought from Bits and Bits a little while ago and made a bunch of passes. I did each row in 4 passes to get my target depth, then had to cut 3 rows to get all the material hogged out of the way. Nothing crazy, just move slow and let the router do the work. Then I flipped over the door and repeated the process on the other side. I marked the depth of the cut before I started just to make sure I didn't go past it. It's important that the shoulders of the tenon are the same depth. It doesn't matter much what that depth is, just that they are the same. To lay out the tenons for the breadboard, I measure in 3/4 of an inch on each side. This is where the tenons will start and ensure that I have enough room in the mortise to allow for the door to expand and contract with the seasons. I then mark the center point and measure out the 3 tenons, each 4 inches wide. 2 on the outsides from that 3/4 inch mark and 1 in the dead center. I use my jigsaw to hog out most of the material in between the tenons here. You gotta be careful to not go past where you want the short little stubby tenon, which is gonna provide the rigidity in the door to be. I had that at about 1 inch. It doesn't have to be a perfectly clean cut, but the straighter the better. I screwed this up a little bit here with my jigsaw and eventually moved to my Japanese pole saw here just because it gave a more predictable result. With all of that cut out of the way, I grabbed a chisel and just cleaned everything up on the shoulder so that I'd get a nice tight fit with the breadboard. Okay, so after getting this all done, well, almost all the way done for this breadboard end, cutting the tenons, I think I'm gonna pivot here. I think I'm going to change course and use screws for this. So that means I don't need these longer tenon pieces, just kind of the 3/4 or 7/8 or whatever across there. For the long shallow tenon will be good. I'll cut some holes for some screws. I just got to thinking, this isn't a table, it's a door. Yeah, it's gonna be hanging vertically, and I think that, I guess I'm just worried about maybe the amount of force that will be on a single tenon in the middle and that draw dowel peg thingy. I think screwing this is going to make it a lot stronger. I can put in maybe 4 big screws, honking screws, and really suck it together. Can still leave the room for the wood movement for it to expand. But yeah, watch along. I'll fix that and we'll go from there. It's definitely a bit of annoying because this is a whole bunch of work and I lost 2 inches off of the kind of the vertical section of the door, but I think that'll be fine. Yeah, we'll figure it out. With that unfortunate segue out of the way, It was time to cut these breadboard ends down to their final length. I just used the miter saw for this. I debated using my crosscut sled, but honestly I get really good results with my miter saw. It's super accurate, it's super square, so I figured why not? It's faster and easier. I needed to set up my router fence here so that the center of the mortise would land exactly in the center of this breadboard, so it was a little bit of trial and error. I used a scrap piece here. One thing I didn't notice until I was watching this video is right here you can see the fence slipping. It took me a while to get this calibrated and to kind of get it all dialed in, and now I think I know why. I made marks on my router table to know where the cut would have to start and stop, as this is like a stop dado, stop mortise thing. So I was careful here to just gently ease the breadboard end onto the router bit and then push it through. I made very shallow passes on this to get the 2-ish inch depth I wanted. I made something like 14 passes. I was going up one rotation of the router lift at a time. I can't remember what that is, but it's like a 1/16 of an inch, I think. So I'd say it's not very much at all. And after I got all those cuts done, I took it over to the door here just to give it a quick test fit, and it was super tight. I grabbed my block plane here and just made a couple small passes to remove just a fraction of the material off of this, and that proved to be just enough. I was able to get it pounded into place without too much effort. Okay, now that we have both sides of the mortise and tenon cut, it's time for the last little bit of layout on this side. I mark in 2 inches and then I mark the center point, and what I'm doing here is making small spots in the tenon for the screw to go through, just to allow it to have that seasonal wood movement and to allow enough room there for the wood to expand and contract. Then I grab my pull saw and I just cut this back till I'm just about to the shoulder of the tenon. I used a coping saw here to turn the corner so I could cut kind of parallel to the tenon shoulder here to remove the bulk of the material. And then just a bit more cleanup with the chisel, and this spot is done. I then repeated the process for the other 2 screw holes on this end of the door. I put the breadboard end on top of the door and then transfer the cuts that I had for the screw holes from the door onto that breadboard end. I carried these up to the top, and this I'll use to mark out the center of the holes I have to drill through next. I have this Miles Craft drill guide that I use to help try to keep me drilling straight here. That's definitely not my forte, but I was able to get the holes really straight with this guide. It was a little bit trickier here with this super long drill bit. I should have clamped it down, which I did for subsequent holes, but yeah, I got the holes drilled all the way through for the screws. This is the secret to this type of breadboard end. I used a slightly oversized drill bit here and just reamed out the hole so that there was enough movement in the screw to account for the expansion and contraction of the door in the end. If you don't do this, it'll be too tight and you're bound to end up with problems. After that, I pounded the end back onto the door so that I could mark out where the screw holes were going to go. To do this, I just took the screw, pushed it through the hole, and just started to ever so slightly drill it into the door, but not enough that it could, risk splitting it or make any serious progress into the door. And then I just cleaned up the tenon a little bit here and pre-drilled those screw holes. The trick here is to glue up only the center piece of the mortise. I put glue in the center maybe 4 inches or so, as it would have been if I would have continued on the path with a hunched tenon. This seemed to work really well. I just put it on the tenon here on the top and the bottom, spread it around with my finger, and that was it. You really have to make sure you don't glue more than just that center piece, otherwise you'll end up with problems with expansion, which is the whole point of all of this work, is to try to combat that. Then it was pounded back into place one final time and drive home those screws. And there you go. That's how I did breadboard end on this barn door. Obviously I have to repeat the steps. I cut the mortises and the tenons and stuff as I was going along. So really now it's just the screw holes and drilling the other one. I got a couple small spots here I got to fix up. It didn't quite tighten up as much as I thought on one side, but I think the gap looks okay. It is a barn door. When I sand it, I'll fill it a little bit, and I got a couple of corrections to make. But yeah, there we go. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it informative. If you have any feedback or whatever, just for sure let me know in the comments. And if you take a minute to like and subscribe, it really helps my channel, it really helps what I'm trying to do here. And thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.